What's going on, guys? It's Yugi Bros, and today I just wanted to cover hand traps for Genesys format because, as you can see here, I've gathered about 50 and 5 on the side that we'll go over in a second, that are all possible options, and obviously the top 2 rows are mostly all the points, and then you have a few scattered ones here. But alternatively, let's look at some free options that exist, and this is not updated 100%. Imperm, for example, is now at 13 points rather than 15. There was an update today. If you want a full coverage on that, I have a video, link in the description down below, regarding the updated points system. For example, Shifter is also 10. But we'll go over specifics in a second, but I just wanted to talk briefly about what you can play if you can't afford these specific point totals when it comes to the hand traps. So, generically, let's just go over like the best hand traps in the game. Impermanence is 13 now, I should say. Nibiru is 10. Droll is 5, not 7. I don't know why they changed it lower. Ash is 15. Bell's 5. Ghost Mourner is 7. Ogre is 5. Sister and Spooky Dogwood is 3. Granted, I don't actually see this being really played all that much anymore because time is different than it used to be, so life points doesn't matter and isn't much anymore. Actually, doesn't matter at all anymore, unless you're obviously winning. And reducing to 0. Valor is 7. Shifter is 10 now. Fuwalos is 7. Perulia is 10. Meows is actually 3 now, not 5. Gamma's 15. Delta is 7. Epsilon is 7. And the Bestials are 33 for Mag, and then 30 for the rest. I'm sorry, 30, 30, and 20 for Sarnier. And then Lubellian's like an honorable mention. He's not obviously a hand trap by himself as a quick effect, but he can get you your other pieces. Granted, you're probably not going to want to play him with all your other things if you need to save points for other stuff. Now, the only other options here are Misk is 75, which I think is a bit high. Maybe they'll drop this over time. Lady Lab, which is 33 and makes sense for the trap decks. And Contact Sea, of all things, is 100. Because this says if your opponent normally special summons a monster, you could special summon this to your opponent's field in defense, and then that controller cannot fusion, synchro, XYZ, or link summon unless they use this card as material, which is really awkward when you don't have the ability to link summon, because you have to be playing exactly a like rank 6 deck if you're doing XYZs. A fusion has to be able to take this Earth Insect as a monster, as a material, or Synchro. I feel like that's the most viable option, unless you're not on Synchro decks, obviously. Hopefully the 6 stars matters. But let's talk about the other free options that exist. First we have DD Crow, who is free. As a quick effect, you discard it, target a card in the opponent's grave, and banish that target. This is a great alternative to the Bestials, which are very, very high cost in banishing. And Crow hits any card versus the Bestials that have to hit a lighter dark monster specifically. So Crow, really good, really free, and expect to see this as one of the main options of choice. Now, alternatively, against banishing, we have Lancia, who obviously sees a lot of play in Advanced right now because of Malice, but Malice is non-existent in Genesys, so this probably won't see play unless a banish deck jumps out of the woodwork. Macro and Di-Fi are both at 3 still, even with the updated points system, so maybe you will see Lancia more often. And then you have Chaos Hunter here, who says when the opponent special summons a monster, you can discard a card to special summon this from the hand, and its continuous effect is your opponent cannot banish cards. So, this might also be a good alternative to stopping something like Macro or Di-Fi, but, you know, it depends. Skullmeister is another generic option that I think will see play if you don't want to pay for these types of hand traps, especially in the case of something like Ghost Spell, where if a card effect is activated in the opponent's grave, you quick effect send this card from your hand to the grave to negate the effect. But it's also not once per turn, and it's 0 points, so that's really, really strong. Ghost Reaper is a card that obviously I don't think we'll see play for a hot second in this format, but if a format in Genesys is ever solved, and there is like a preceding best deck that has one specific boss monster specifically, you best believe Ghost Reaper will see play, and they will probably add it to the points list somewhere. Like, I don't know, let's assume ABC Dragon became really, really powerful again in this format. This was the reason, this got played for ABC back in the day, so I could definitely see this get played in the format again. Another jack of all trades is No Material, which says if the opponent special summons a monster while you control no cards, you can discard this card, target a face-up monster your opponent controls this turn. That monster cannot be tributed nor used for a material of a fusion, synchro, Xyz, or link, but the link doesn't matter. Again, this is more on the Mulcharmy line, right, where you have to have no cards to use it, but as we've seen with the Mulcharmies, they're still really, really strong if you're going second, and No Material is definitely no slouch in this position either. The other thing is, going second in this format, it's still obviously being worked on, but going second is better in this format because sometimes the extra card matters more, and you can play a lot of power cards going second, while, you know, going first is up in the air. It's debatable. We're not really sure exactly, but it's definitely more powerful in this format than it is in Advanced. Then we have the Heralds, which negate monster effects, spells, and traps, all respectively, by pitching themselves and another fairy monster in the hand. They're all free, so if you have a fairy deck, you can kind of go wild with these. Retaliating Sea. Now, I want to talk about... Oh, you know what? I am literally missing good old Max Sea. Perfect. It's still a 50-card list. I wanted to talk about the Seas, and obviously we talked about this Sea, so let's move him over here. Max Sea, 50 points. That's a lot. You could play 2 Max Seas in your deck and then nothing else on that list. I would suggest probably not doing that, as powerful as this card is, unless your list conveniently just doesn't get hit by the list at all. And if you can search this card, maybe it's good to play it as a one of and then use the other 50 points accordingly depending on what you're going for. But Retaliating Sea is if the opponent activates a spell card that includes the effect to special summon a monster, you can quick effect special summon this card from the hand, and then if summoned this way while it's on the field, any card sent to the grave is banished instead, so it's a macro. And then if this is sent from the field to the grave, you can add an Earth Insect with 1500 or less attack from deck to the hand, a la Max Sea, or any of the other Seas, I believe. So Retaliating in combination with a single Max Sea is a pretty viable option. Another viable option, though, that people kind of forget is Flying Sea, which is if the opponent normally special summons a monster except in the damage step, you special summon this from your hand to your opponent's field, and that controller cannot XYZ summon. Now, obviously, this is only good against XYZ-centric decks, but if Ryzel, for example, was still relevant in this new format, this would be the perfect side deck card for that deck that costs you absolutely nothing to use. Sneaky Sea is the last one, and this one is a bit odd. It's if the opponent special summons a monster, you can special summon this card from your hand in face down defense position, and if you do during the end phase of this turn, it's changed to face up defense position, and then if it's flipped face up during the end phase, it destroys all special summon monsters on the field. It's awkward. It's only really strong if they're specialing in the main phase too, because then it's going to get flipped the very next phase. If you do this in the main one, they still have the ability to attack it. However, it just has to be flipped for its effect to activate, so hopefully they don't pop it beforehand. But it does, you know, create countermeasures where they do have to play around it. But again, this card is also 0 points, so pretty cool there. We have Ally of Justice Cycle Raider, which if a light deck is relevant, and there are plenty of light decks that are pretty good, you can discard this card as a quick effect to target up to 2 light monsters in the opponent's grave and banish those targets. So it can hit both, which is pretty cool. It can hit 2 cards instead of just 1. It's like a double DD Crow against light monsters specifically. We have now the Puppet Plant, the Electric Virus, and the Marionette Mite, which are all cards that say you discard them to target one of 2 types of monsters and then take control of them till the end phase. So if a Warrior Spellcaster deck, a Machine or Dragon deck, or a Fiend or Zombie deck is ever relevant, these are fantastic side deck options that you can side. Once again, if you don't have space for something like this, or you don't have points that you want for like a Change of Heart or a Snatch Deal, or obviously Talents, which is stupidly expensive on this. Then we have Singularity Fiend, which actually a lot of people don't even know this card exists. It came out in Maze of the Master earlier this year. It says if the opponent special summons a monster, except in the damage step, you can discard this card and a spell to destroy that monster or monsters. It can pop all of them if multiple are summoned at the same time. Obviously, nobody's going to be a pendulum summoning in this format, but this card is still really strong. The downside, however, is that you do have to pitch a spell in addition to it. Has to be a spell. Most of the time, there's no spells that you're just willing to give up going into your opponent's turn. But again, if you're going second, depending on what they summon, it might be worth pitching a spell and this card to prevent them from putting up a pretty powerful board. Misk, like I said, I just want to touch briefly on. In Dinos, obviously this is a hand trap, but it also doubles as a grave effect to summon a dinosaur from your deck. I don't see this card staying at 75 points, not for long, but I do understand where its complication comes in and it just being a dual threat in both the hand effect and the grave effect. So we'll see where it goes with that. Dogmatica has the ability to grab Fleur-de-Lis, which is during the main phase. If a monster special summon from the extra deck is on the field, you can special summon this from the hand. And then if you have another Dogmatica, you can negate the effects of a face-up monster on the field until the end of the turn. I will say this is more problematic because you also have to have another Dogmatica. Usually it's something along the lines of Ecclesia, which is a 3-point card, and that's not much. However, the card to search it in the Dear Servant is a 33-point card, so this engine does cost a bit more if you were to play all of the cards. There is an interesting caveat to Fleur-de-Lis, for example, however, and that is that it's 25-25 and could be played in something like Genesys. So that's just something interesting to think about. Thunder Dragon I just put down here as an option because you'll see this in the Exodia FTK decks. Now granted, with the updates to Dark World Dealings and Chicken Game and all the pseudo field spell equivalents, hopefully maybe you won't see that as much anymore. But this is a card still that you can pitch it, add up to 2 Thunder Dragons from deck to hand with, and costs 0 points. So depending if you want to thin the deck or get free discard fodder, this is an option for you. Iron Dragon Tiamatron. I've done this twice now. Iron Dragon Tiamatron. This was a lot easier with an extra monster zone, but if 3 or more cards are in the same column quick effect, you can special summon this card from your hand. And if it's special summoned, it destroys all other cards in this card's column. Also, neither player can use those unused zones. Now, usually, this doesn't really come up. It was better with the EMZ being a thing. But you can still finagle the field in a way where 3 or more is easy to hit, and this doesn't have to summon to the column with 3 or more. So it could be a very powerful disruption depending on the deck you're playing. Just keep in mind that your opponent's going to A, have to have 2 cards in the same column, and B, you're going to have a spell a trap in that same column as well. So if you're not heavy on spell traps, it's probably not worth it, but also they have to be playing into it, and if this card ever saw play, people would just play around it like they used to play around Mech Knights when those were a thing. Lastly here, I've got some random like summonable ones that come out in random ways. Kaiser Glider Golden Burst is just quick effect tribute a monster, special summon this card from your hand. If it's summoned, you can target a monster your opponent controls, and this card's attack becomes that monster's attack till the end phase. I don't know if this could ever be relevant in something, but the fact that it's a quick effect, I feel like makes it an interesting option depending on the deck. Vados is really, really strong against field spells. As a quick effect during the main phase, so either player's main phase, you can target a card in the field zone, special this to the opponent's field, and if you do, destroy that card being the field spell. And then they can set an Ashen, that doesn't matter. The point is, if this card is then sent from your opponent's field to your graveyard, you can destroy all monsters on the field, so it doubles as both a out to field spells and then a pseudo dark hole depending on what happens to Vados after the fact. Lord of the Heavenly Prison is 0 points, and I'm kind of shocked by this, especially with Paleo running around. Now, I understand they did hit Rollback and Trapaholic, and I think one other card, to make that less popular, but this card is 0 points and protects your back row and then summons for free and sets any spell trap directly from the deck. I don't know, this card just seems crazy as a 0-pointer, but you know, he is kind of slow. And Lady Lab, for example, is a card you'd pair with this, and she is 33. Unchained. Now, Unchained is unplayable, and I'm not screwing this one up like I did the other 2 cards with links. Unchained as the deck is unplayable because you need the links to facilitate it. However, Abominable Unchained Soul, if you've ever played Sealed, this card is just crazy in the simple fact that, like, if a card or cards you control is a battle or card effect, you can special summon this card from the hand, and if it's special summoned, you discard a card for cost, and at res, you destroy one card in the field doesn't target. Also, once per turn during the end phase, if this is sent to the grave because it was destroyed on the field and sent there this turn, you can special summon it, but place it on the bottom after the fact. It, again, depends on the format for sure, depends on the deck for sure, but he's not awful, and he is 3k, and he's non-targetable destruction. Depends what you're playing. Obviously, it's better in a deck where you're popping your own cards. But it's a hand trap. And then lastly, I have Divine Serpent Geh, which is kind of a low card, but this card is hilarious. If a monster you control is destroyed by an opponent's attack or card effect, you can pay half, special summon this card from your hand. It can't be targeted by card effects. If it attacks an opponent's monster during the damage step, only negate the effects of the monster while it's face up on the field. And also, its attack becomes half its original attack. And then once per turn, if this card battles during damage calc, you can make this card's attack become equal to the highest original attack on the field. So it's just a hilarious card in general that you could use. There's also Gores, which is why I have it down here. I know Gores hasn't seen play since who God knows when, but like maybe it's got a place in Genesys format. The same goes for these stall cards in Swift Scarecrow, Fader, and Gentlemander to a lesser extent. If you want to go the speed duel route, you can even play Sphere Karibo, although I'd argue this card's not good either, unless you're playing a ritual with it. Relinquished. But guys, these are just my quick thoughts on hand trap options other than the obvious ones that costs actual points. The strong ones in my opinion are Crow, Skullmeister, Flying Sea if they're on XYZs, Retaliating Sea regardless. This card's just really, really strong. I think Singularity Fiend might have a home somewhere someday, maybe not yet, but that card is really, really cool. And then obviously, depending on the format, Cycle Reader, Puppet, Electric Virus, Marionette Might, depending on what you're playing against. Also, No Material might be a sleeper that we haven't thought about yet. This card has always been like hit and miss, and people were always turned off by the fact that you have to have nothing when they summon, but look at the Mulch Armies. They're literally the same. If you have no cards, you can use them, and they're all meta, or at least these two are meta, so why wouldn't this one also be? Good questions. Leave them down below, and let's see what we can break with hand traps.